If you're moving to Boston and you're looking into East Boston, it is a beautiful up-and-coming neighborhood just across the water from downtown Boston. And people sometimes forget that it's a city neighborhood. It's part of Boston. It is one of the Boston neighborhoods. And there's actually a lot of talk right now about East Boston in the news and in articles, so I will get to that in this video. But today we're talking all about what it's like to live in East Boston and what you should know if you're moving to Eastie. So let's get into it. Hey, welcome to the channel, or welcome back. My name is Jacob Peistrup, and real quick, if you're moving to Eastie, if you're moving somewhere in Boston looking to sign a lease, purchase a home or a condo, I am a realtor here. If you want help, reach out, send us an email, send us a text, whatever works for you. I love hearing from my YouTube viewers all the time, but in this video, we're talking about what it's like to live in East Boston. Eastie, as you will hear it called here in Boston. It's got a lot to offer, and there's a bunch of stuff happening right now in East Boston that I'm gonna explain in this video. Right off the bat, it is becoming this newer neighborhood. There is a lot of development, lots of stuff happening that's been pretty recent over the past couple of years in East Boston. I'm talking luxury apartments, luxury condos, condo conversions, lots of new construction and renovation happening in East Boston. So it's become this very high growth area over the past couple of years. And kind of the center of all this in Eastie is surrounding Jeffries Point. So Jeffries Point is one of the neighborhoods in East Boston, and this is the place that is right on the water. It is right across, looking directly at downtown Boston. This is where all of the new condos, the new apartments, like some of the really big projects in Eastie are happening right here. Now, don't get me wrong, there is new construction pretty much like every part of Eastie. Like, it is a very transforming neighborhood these days, but Jeffries Point is kind of, the epicenter of all the new stuff in Eastie, the luxury apartments, luxury condos. You got everything right there on the waterfront, and that's kind of like the prime real estate in East Boston. And unfortunately, that has caused some issues in the community just because it is kind of this gentrifying area. It's getting more expensive. It's still, way more affordable than a place like Back Bay or Seaport or Fenway, but it's, prices are going up in Eastie, especially with everyone moving there and especially with all of the new development happening. It is definitely on a very, high upward trend with price and just growth. Lots of stuff happening in East Boston. And Eastie is kind of interesting because it's like its own area because it's not connected to the rest of Boston. You got to cross the Boston Harbor to get to East Boston, so it's kind of separated. It's over there by the airport, Revere, Winthrop, kind of the start of the North Shore, but it is officially in the city of Boston. It's just not connected to downtown Boston. So obviously, if you live in Eastie, there is no walking into downtown Boston. If you work in Boston or the financial district or Cambridge, wherever you work, you're not gonna be able to live in Eastie and just walk to work because you got the Boston Harbor right there. You can drive into downtown, you can Uber, you can take the T, you can swim. No, I'm just kidding, don't swim. But you can't walk there, so it's kind of separated by the water. So sometimes it might feel kind of isolated over in Eastie because, the water separates you from downtown Boston. Now, with Eastie, the three different neighborhoods you wanna know about is gonna be Jeffries Point, Eagle Hill, and Orient Heights. And you could split these up even further into Eagle Hill, Lower Eagle Hill, Orient Heights, Lower Orient Heights, but basically those are the three areas of Eastie you want to know about. Jeffries Point, I mentioned this one earlier. This is the portion of Eastie that is closest to downtown. This is everything along the waterfront, looking directly across at downtown Boston. So this is where you have, the expensive condos and apartments that have those views of the water, the harbor, the skyline of Boston. You got Piers Park, which is right there in Jeffries Point. It is beautiful. Like, if you're looking for a picturesque place to go take Instagram pictures, it's gonna be Piers Park, because that is right on the water. You just have the entire Boston skyline looking at you in this part of Eastie. And that's definitely one of the reasons it's so popular. Like, developers are scrambling for these lots of land to develop along the waterfront in East Boston, because Jeffries Point, like I said, is kind of like the center of where you have all of this massive development happening across the water from downtown Boston. And as you might guess, because of that, it is definitely one of the more expensive parts of Eastie, especially if your apartment or your condo is looking across the water. Like, those views are what you pay a premium for if you live in Jeffries Point. And again, you know, there is controversy behind all of this just because of how quickly a lot of this area has been developed in the recent years. So that's Jeffries Point. Now, the next neighborhood just above that is Eagle Hill. So Eagle Hill is just north of Jeffries Point. Eagle Hill is kind of closer towards Chelsea than downtown Boston, so there's a bridge connecting those two. Eagle Hill has some very historic homes, but again, you also see a bunch of new development, condo conversions, renovations going on, upzoning, you know, taking a single family house and turning it into a 3-family, 4-family, whatever it is. Lots of development happening in this portion of Eastie as well. Like, across Eastie, you see a lot of development, lots of stuff being built, whether it's, you know, a giant new apartment building, or if it's just, you know, converting a 3-decker into, you know, a set of 3 condos with a condo conversion. Now, Orient Heights is kind of the last part of Eastie, and this is all the way kind of northeast. So this is the furthest away from Boston. Orient Heights is gonna be the lowest on the price spectrum in Eastie because you're further from the city. This is up past the airport, and Orient Heights is actually closer to Revere and Winthrop along the North Shore than it is to downtown Boston. And if you wanna include the airport as the 4th neighborhood of Eastie, you can definitely do that. The airport takes up a huge portion of East Boston. So if you didn't know, East Boston is where the Boston Logan International Airport is. So that takes up a huge chunk of land right on the water. So you might not love the noise from the airport, but hey, on the bright side, like, if you want a weekend getaway, if you live in Eastie, like, you are closer than anybody in Boston to the airport if you want to leave town for a few days and go on a quick trip. Just trying to put a positive spin on that if you live somewhere close to the airport, which anywhere in Eastie is probably going to be relatively close to the airport. Like I said earlier, there is a lot of talk right now about East Boston, both good and bad. It's kind of a controversial issue just because there is a lot of development happening in Eastie. The prices are going up very quickly. If you want to use the word gentrification, you know, it's kind of a politicized word, but that's really what's going on right now in Eastie. And this is an area where historically it's been occupied by lots of immigrants and hardworking families who have grown up in this area and raised their families. And now the issue is that it's becoming too expensive for them to afford because of all the new apartments and the new condo buildings going up in Eastie. People are getting priced out of it who have lived there their whole lives and raised their families there. So if you live in Eastie, you will, without a doubt, either hear about it, you'll see it, or you'll just in some way be exposed to the tensions between, you know, the groups of people who have lived in Eastie for decades and the developers, the new construction, and the kind of newcomers to the area who are not originally from Eastie. And like I said, Eastie has historically been occupied by lots of different groups of immigrants. You can walk through East Boston and you will see little shops, grocery stores, restaurants, and cafes from around the world. Lots of international places to eat here because it has always had a very thriving, you know, immigrant population. And the issue these days is that it is too expensive for a lot of these families to afford. So their taxes are going up, their rent's going up. A lot of the owners of these properties are actually selling their real estate to the developers who want to turn a 3-decker into luxury condos. So that's kind of the debate going on right now in East Boston. And it just becomes a very complex issue very quickly when you have everyone who lives there who can't afford it anymore, the developers who are growing their portfolios, the linkage fees and everything associated with building new commercial space and paying for affordable housing, and then the issue of, is it really affordable housing and are there enough affordable units? The answer is no. And then combine that with all the expensive luxury units because people are moving into Eastie very quickly. It just becomes a complicated issue and there isn't really one way to solve it and make everyone happy. And what you'll hear a lot of people say is that Eastie is no longer Eastie because you have this huge new population of students, working professionals, people who are new to the area moving to Boston and moving into Eastie and kind of displacing the people who have lived there, and then combine that with the developers buying people out and building up new condos. It just becomes a very controversial topic in Boston. Like, people could even argue that I'm contributing to this because here I am, some real estate guy on YouTube making a video about Eastie for people moving to Eastie. Trust me, that's not my goal here. I mean, I've had a lot of viewers on YouTube ask for information on Eastie, so I'm trying to be transparent about it, but you can't live in Eastie and not know about what's going on and at least not, be aware that there are definitely issues happening right now between the city of Boston, the developers, and the people who have historically lived in East Boston. Overall, that's what you gotta know because East Boston is, like I said, rapidly transforming. It's kind of this up and coming neighborhood. And look, I mean, if you're looking for a newly built condo, townhouse, apartment, whatever it is, you will find brand new in East Boston at a lower price than pretty much any other neighborhood in Boston. Definitely cheaper than Back Bay or Fenway or Seaport. And what's kind of happening in East Boston is what already happened and still is happening in South Boston and Dorchester, where you have these older, more historic neighborhoods that just get very quickly developed and turned into these modern luxury buildings, and it changes the group of people who live there. So I think a lot of that is people who saw what happened to Dorchester and South Boston maybe trying to avoid that happening to their neighborhood in East Boston. So safe to say there is a lot of stuff happening right now in East Boston. Like I said, I mean, if you're looking for new, luxury living on the waterfront or somewhere close to downtown Boston, and you enjoy that neighborhood kind of feel, you enjoy having the parks nearby and still easy access into Boston via whether you take the highway or you take the T to get into the city, East Boston definitely can offer that to you. I don't say any of that trying to steer you away from East Boston or scare you out of moving there, but if you do a quick Google search, you will see very quickly what's going on in Eastie and you will see these articles pop up. So I figure might as well address it in the video to kind of clear up any questions you might have if you're not familiar with the Eastie situation. So like I said, if you are moving to East Boston, somewhere else in Boston or the suburbs, if you want help with that process of renting an apartment, buying a condo, buying a house, or if you just have questions about the area, my contact info is right below. That is how you get in touch with me. Send us an email, send us a text, whatever works for you. Let's get in touch and let's get you here to Boston. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hope this was informative and provided value to you. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video right here on the Living Boston channel. Take care.